Welcome to our podcast, The World According to Lisa.
And Jim, too.
Today's episode is called From Stoop to Spells, Meet the Cast of The Brooklyn Witch.
All the people.
So we're going to talk about the characters, the people, places, and things that populate the world of the Brooklyn Witch.
We're also going to delve into how we structured it a little and how, things are so predictable and cliche and so many things you read or watch on TV. And how we try to incorporate some twists and turns and make it a little different so it's not your normal fantasy. So guess what? You're not going to see any dwarves and elves
And vampires. I don't like vampires.
No vampires.
People ask why aren't there vampires? Because I don't like them.
Lisa doesn't like them. Lisa thinks vampires.
I used to sleep with blankets covering my neck in case they came into my room.
Yes, Lisa thinks vampires suck, just so you know. Okay.
No, I'm really afraid of. I don't like vampires. So
she doesn't like scary.
I will not write
stuff.
a vampire book. Sorry.
No vampires. Sorry,
Nope.
Not sexy vampires, not smelly vampires, not bad vampires.
I want to suck your blood.
Yeah.
Nope.
I don't mind that. I am an aficionado of H.P. Lovecraft and James Herbert and stories like that. But Lisa would
Listen. There was dead people in my room, in my bedroom as a child. Okay.
Yes.
That's how I.
Not actual dead people, Lisa. Please make that clear.
I lived down the block from a cemetery,
Yes.
and they're like, "Ooh, she could see us. Let's go there."
They were spirits, and not the good spirits like Johnny Walker or Jim Beam. They were scary spirits.
So I used to make sure that my neck was covered.
Right.
So I don't like vampires.
No one likes vampires, and I help her with that because I put garlic in everything I make,
That's right.
even in breakfast.
Oh my God, you do it naturally. It's like
Yes.
organic. Scare away Dracula.
I'm protecting you, sweetheart.
I know.
Everything has garlic in it. That's why when first time she went to church, after I made Lisa dinner, Lisa's mother turned to her and says, "How much garlic did you eat?"
As I was singing my heart out.
But the old ladies as she was walking by would go, "Ooh, Bella, I'm making sauce tonight."
That's like my sauce.
Yes. So we're going to talk about characters, and let's hit it right from the top. The number one character, the most important one, is, of course, the Brooklyn Witch, Speranza O'Rourke.
Speranza O'Rourke. Nickname, Anna.
Yes, that's what her kids called her. Like, Lisa loves
Everybody has a nickname.
Yeah, Lisa loves to taunt me because my name's James, so some people say Jim, some people say Jimmy, but my family called me Jamesy.
Jamesy.
So my mother specifically. So when Lisa wants to taunt me, which is quite often, she says, "Jamesy, what are you doing, Jamesy?" So Speranza's Anna. So when somebody calls her Anna, that's an intimate. It's a person that she knows from back in the day.
So when her husband calls her Anna.
Yes.
So that's the intimate name that was given, the nickname.
And her best friend and people that.
For instance, when I had the store, right? When we had the boutique.
Right.
Lily's Valise. The people that knew me
Right.
did not call me Lily.
Right.
Like my family called me Lily when I was growing up.
Right.
And also at parties or whatever. But if somebody referenced me as is Lily here today in the store?
Right.
We knew they didn't know me.
Right. Or the best part is when they would say, "Well, Lily told me personally that I should get a discount." And I said, "No, Lily didn't do that because Lily doesn't exist. But thanks anyway to that, sweetheart. You're paying full price. In fact, you're paying double."
Oh, boy. All right. So Speranza. So, of course, so it was really tough figuring out her age.
Right.
Because we wanted to make sure her references worked for her age group.
Age group, yes.
But not to make her too old, not to make her too young. But I did want to have the character be older. I didn't want her to be a young ingenue.
Right.
And she's 58 years old. So in the back of the book, there is a cast of characters where it's written out. And you could read about each character.
And it's very important. Like what we had to say is if Speranza's this age, how old is her grandmother? And we're like saying, hey,
we did the math on that.
She's pretty old. How's that going to work? We said, okay.
But they're wishes.
They're wishes.
She's
So
95. She doesn't look 95.
That's what's called fiction. You make stuff up. We're suspending our disbelief a little. When we watch a show sometimes, they say, "Lisa, oh, look what's hanging up there. It's your disbelief. It's suspended over our heads."
So is it like Eiffel Tower suspended?
Or-
Is it, Mount Everest?
Or your shoelace, it all depends.
Yeah, but we put it up with different height.
Right, but you
Like
have
that's just Eiffel Tower height.
one other thing you have to figure out is when you give a character, we give them a backstory, right? Lisa, talk about that a little bit, what we do, how we wrote a backstory, and we wrote a little something about each character.
Well, with Speranza, I mean, she does talk about that she's from a bloodline of witches and how it skips a generation, and that she has one daughter who does not possess magic because it skips her, but it goes to the granddaughter.
Right.
And you're going to learn more about that in book 2 as versus book 1, because that's when her granddaughter comes into her powers in book 2.
Yes.
So you'll have to wait for that. But she's very loyal to her family and friends. She'll do anything to protect them. She has mama bear energy.
Well, so here's the thing. When you write a character, right, what you do is you think of a person, and it could be a person you know, or it could be yourself and your husband. Sorry, I'm a little hoarse. Or it could be a historical character or someone you know from the neighborhood. And you take that as a basis, right? That's the beginning part of it. But you add and subtract qualities.
I added me, to the fictional character with lessons I've learned, things I've gone through, life,
Right.
all little fun things about my life, little fun stories. I just brought it into her
Right.
to build her as a person.
Right, right. You made a lot of Speranza's backstory be your backstory.
Yes. I mean, that's how I brought her alive.
Right.
I gave her actual characteristics of me.
Right.
So when people that know me are reading the book, they're like, I feel like I'm hanging out with you. And it's true. If I was this powerful witch, that would, there's different things. She is a fictional character.
Right.
But all the things that she does are stories from my life.
Right. We didn't take we didn't base it on like Theodore Roosevelt or something. We said we're picking out a person and we're just using
Well, I
that.
did a lot of things about her husband, Sean.
Right.
I mean, he's the same thing, half Italian, half Irish, which we are.
Right.
Both of us had Italian mothers growing up. But I did make him. I mean, everyone thought you were a cop on the train,
Right.
even though you were an accountant.
Yes. When they see a 6-foot-tall Irish guy covered in donut crumbs, they immediately say, oh, 50, 50, and they go to the next car, which worked really well. The only problem was old ladies would always stand next to me and think they were safe. And they'd say, you know what? No, you're not, because I'm running. I don't have to be fast. I just have to be faster than you.
Now, in the description of Sean, just moving on to him really quick, we put in here that he has one blue eye and one hazel brown eye.
Which is what I have, actually.
And Jim has 2 different color eyes. So there's a lot of things from our life that we brought into it to give it real authenticity.
Right. And it's very tough to describe that. When somebody asks, what color are your eyes? He said, well, there's a story with that.
Well, you don't have a driver's license.
No, I don't drive, actually. I don't believe in it. I think it's not a good thing. You really wouldn't want me driving.
I could not be in the car with you driving.
No.
Couldn't. It's
forget
bad
it.
enough you in the passenger seat.
It's bad enough with
I
me.
think someone's going to cross the street.
It's bad enough with me walking. She doesn't like to walk with me because she'll say, well, what are you doing? Watch out. You're going to fall.
So, okay, back to Sean. His whole family, he came from a family of cops, which you came from a family of accountants.
Yes, not cops.
Right. So it was just like,
I came from a family that ran from the cops on both sides. So
now he knows about magic.
yes.
He's just a little ignorant of the details. So when I remember when my mother told you when we were getting married, and she said, well, I forgot what she said. What did she say to you? Like
A lot of things.
Well, the
A
part
lot of nasty things, actually.
that you came back and you said you like my being unpredictable.
Yes, I said I like Lisa's unpredictable. She always surprises
So
me.
she said, "Good luck. You got it now."
Yeah, I mean,
And you were like, "She keeps me on my toes."
yeah, she's not boring, that's for sure.
So it's the same thing that Sean understands that there's magic. He's ignorant, but he loves his wife beyond anything and everything. And
Right.
he'll go to any length to back up her crazy adventures, which you do for me.
Correct. So what happens is Sean is her rock, right? And he supports her, but he also doesn't like magic and everything that has to do with it. And now he's going to get increasingly involved in it, and he's not liking it. And as a cop, he sees a lot of bad stuff. And right away, when he sees some of the magic, he says, oh, this is bad stuff, because the criminal and the murderer might be only 3 feet tall, but you can
Because
tell
he
it.
is intuitive as well. There's in magic and possessing magic, but then he's also very intuitive. He's a very good detective.
Right.
And it shows in his work and parts of the book where they're like, he's going to figure this out. We need to do something about it.
Right. So she figures out how she's going to cover it up because she knows he's going to figure it out. So she wants to put the best face on it so she can explain away what she did, what she has to do. She has an imperative. Magic has its own imperative that she has to do certain things. And because she's the protector of her, what we call her patch, she has duties that she has. And she says to Sean at one point, you chose to be a cop. I didn't choose to be a witch.
Right. I was born into this.
Right. So it's a heritage and she can't just renounce it.
Mm-hmm.
That's an important theme that people have. You can't really renounce your heritage. When you do, that really messes you up. I see that all the time. So when you see someone who has a heritage and then in their 20s, they try to renounce it and say, I'm not like that. I don't do that anymore. But then when they get older and they get to our age, they come back to what they did when they were kids.
Okay. You just made me remember something. In the book, she's 58. She comes back to her heritage. She worked on Wall Street. She did other jobs. And now at midlife, she goes back to her roots.
Right.
And when all the jobs that I had, when I opened my boutique that's in the same spot as the Brooklyn Witch's store, the Sealy Court, Lily's Valise, when I opened that store, Lily's Valise, it was, I kind of was coming back home.
Right.
So I was coming full circle in my life to that point and thought that was going to be what I was going to do for the rest of my life. I think when she opened her little spiritual shop, she thought that's what she was going to do for the rest of her life, not knowing what was going to come from that.
Right. And what happened was, like Lisa said, she lived in a very cohesive Italian Jewish neighborhood. And she knew everybody. Everybody knew her. That's how most of us of our age grew up. When we got married and she moved down to Carroll Gardens, where I live, she dived right back and came back to her roots and was
that's
involved.
That's where my grandmother was from.
Right. But she also dove into the neighborhood, so she got to meet all the people that I knew. And he said, "Oh, Jim's wife." Oh, I remember.
And then also being a merchant on Court Street.
Right.
People frequent your store. You see them on the streets on the way walking from the house to the store. So
right.
You see the same people over and over and you make friends.
Right. But we also knew the old timers and we knew the new people who would come into the store.
And the shop owners.
Right. But for example, what happened one time I was sick and Lisa had to go shopping, which she hates to do. So she goes into the pork store and she says, "I don't know what to get. Just get whatever Jim buys."
Yes. Another time I did put you on FaceTime and made you talk to the deli guy.
Yes. So it's great. That feeling of neighborhood, we try to recreate everywhere we do. We try to recreate it in Long Island here. That's why we're more friends with the butchers and the guys that handle the milk in all the big supermarkets. Hey, how do you know the guy from Costco? Well, we talk to him actually, because that's what how we do things. And that freaks her mother out because she doesn't talk to anybody. So she's saying, how do you know the guy from Stop and Shop? He comes over and tells you they got the milk in the back and he's going to go get it for you. And that's what you do when you're from Brooklyn. You talk to people and you make it a sense of community where you are. So when she talks about Speranza came back to both the community of where she lived, but also the community of magic, the fairies that she knew, the people that interact with her, the part of her little gang, right? She has a gang.
It's not the gang, it's a club.
Right. So Lisa even did that when she got together with her group of friends to meet and talk about a certain spiritual thing. She called it the Moon Gang. It wasn't the Moon Club. It was a gang. So it's back to Brooklyn, So what Speranza and Sean have is a very tight bond, but like any tight bond in any marriage, in any grouping, you have things that you don't really want to highlight because that bugs your partner, so you don't really, talk about it, or you try to say.
We try to keep them as real as possible.
Yes.
So on the podcast previous to this one, Sunday Meatballs and a Little Magic, I did read a little part of the book where it shows how they come together and how food's a part of their life. Because Sean's the cook, and if it's always like in the morning, just like you're like, oh, what am I making for dinner tonight?
Yeah, I didn't put my frustrations in the book. We put Lisa's frustrations because I say to her all the time, "What do you want to eat?" Yeah. And she said, "I don't know."
She hates that.
What do you mean you don't know? I always know what I want to eat. I want to eat that and more of that and some of that.
Yeah.
You know, that's like when we would go to a restaurant, which was very disturbing.
Oh, he did this to me every time.
So I would go and
What looks good? What do you
so
think, Jim?
I
What do you
picked
think?
I picked the thing I know she's gonna like, and I say, yeah, I'm gonna have the chicken française, and I hate chicken. But she said, oh, really? That looks really good with mushrooms and
I
everything.
wouldn't have believed that. You have to use a different example.
Okay,
I definitely wouldn't have believed that.
I'm gonna get the spaghetti carbonara. Let's just say,
Okay, I
right?
believe that.
Right? He says, oh, that looks good. I'll get that. And then when the guy comes around, I'd order something totally
So
different.
he makes me order first.
Right.
Because, of course, they come to me and I say, oh, I want the spaghetti carbonara.
Don't you hate when everybody orders the same thing? And we used to go out with all Lisa's girlfriends.
It's like a Lucy episode.
Yeah. Well, we would all get together, and Lisa would get together with her friends periodically for whatever reason, and we'd all go out to dinner. But they just say, Jim, just order for us, whatever you think is good. And then we would order, for everybody, and I knew kind of what they liked, but they weren't that interested in it.
Well, back to what you would do is that you would let me order first, and then you ordered something completely different.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, man, that sounds really good.
But that's the point of, I think, going out. You don't both order the same thing. Order two different things so you can each taste it a little and get an idea of it. Maybe the next time you like it, So even though we don't eat out anymore, but still, it's still good. But anyway, it's about the food, and Sean is all about the food, and Lisa, or Speranza actually, also enjoys food. So that's a big part of the story, as we had said.
And then it's really fun because she is, let's call her a fictional Lisa.
Yes.
So I can really do different fun things with the character. I don't have to worry about it really being me because it's not. It's just I throw some of human things in there and stories, and I'm like, oh, I could use this story that this happened to me in.
Or incidents that happen in our life, and I'll say, oh, well, we're going to put
That's
that
what
in.
makes them feel real when you're reading it because it really did happen, and I could describe it as it really happened.
Yeah, and it's different. Sometimes when you read a book and they take a historical character, right, and they write about that historical character, and you say, there's no way this particular person is like that.
It's not believable.
Right. It's just nonsense. It's just they're putting attributes and attitudes and anachronisms that you see all the time, and you say, well, Ulysses St. Grant is not going to say, well, that's cool. No, that's not going to happen. So when we look at it, we just look at each other and say, well, let's go to the next channel because this is nonsense. So it's tough to write a character that's believable and relatable and also fun, because one of the things that happens that we notice, and I noticed that I'm in a couple of book clubs here at the library, and I'm in with a lot of people that read.
I hate when you say library.
Library?
You're so smart, and you say library.
I'm from Brooklyn, and that's the way it goes. You know what I'm saying? So what happens is they're all voracious readers, right? But it was funny. I just went to the page turners yesterday, and everybody was talking about books. But what they did, they referenced a lot of TV shows. And they would say, oh, this book, and then they made it into a TV show, and this and that was wrong. So a lot of people is so pervasive. And for the younger kids, I feel like Mr. Wilson, get off my lawn. The younger people, it's all on their phones. So everything is that. They're not, a lot of them aren't really readers. But when you have a TV show or a book, everything is very cliched. And if you've had a lot of experience and seen a lot of stuff, and especially if something you like a fantasy or a detective story, even a romance, you've seen it 1,000 times before. Like, for instance, Hallmark movies, right? We watch a Hallmark movie and you say, oh, okay, we're waiting for the conflict in the third act.
Right.
And
then the Hallmark kiss, and then it's done.
And then it's done.
It's over in less than 30 seconds once they have the Hallmark kiss.
Yeah, so all of a sudden that's the end of it, and then they go to the next show. So it's a formula, and
it works.
And people like things that are familiar.
Yes.
That's something that you want. You don't want it to be so totally foreign that you look at it and you say, this is so weird. I don't know why I'm watching this or reading this. So
I do like when we find shows like, for instance, River. If anybody has watched that, I mean, there will be spoilers in this podcast. So if you haven't seen it, sorry.
Well, that's a pretty old show. I think most people have seen it.
It's pretty old.
And what it's about a detective who's talking to his partner all the time and interacting with her. And then you don't realize it stars Nicola Walker. And she plays a detective, but we don't realize until the end that she's actually...
Before you say it, we were talking about how people use the characters, right? With there's flashback characters, there's imaginary characters. Like those are all ways to bring in characters in a show or a book.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is cheap. Like, in other words, Lisa said, why did this happen? I says, because it's bad writing.
Yeah.
Okay? You want to have exposition. You want to develop the characters. You want to write and show something that people can follow along with and like.
And the reason why I'm bringing up River is because they did it so well that you believed this character existed throughout the entire series.
It was very subtle, and it was well done. And the kicker was that the woman was actually dead.
And it was his imagination.
So he was talking to his imaginary partner that was dead. Now, how that would work, it didn't actually really work, because if he was talking to her and he's standing next to somebody, they look at him and say, "What, are you crazy? Who are you talking to?" You know? So that's
But
like,
it was a good show. It was a good show.
right. So we look at shows all the time, and we read books all the time. Well, oftentimes we're reading stuff, and Lisa would say, "Oh, I'm reading this cozy mystery," and it's going along the lines as it always goes. You know, it's always. So when something is different and there's a twist, you look at it and you say,
And you
"Oh,
get excited.
yeah." You say, I didn't expect that." Now,
I love when I don't expect something and it happens.
right, there's a big trend now. One of the things they like to do is they have a main character and they kill him off right away. You know,
Like in Game of Thrones.
right, in Game of Thrones, that was the big example that
It
people
was
point
like
to.
one of the first times it happened. Not the first, but the very popular.
Right. It was shocking, because a lot of times we watch a show and we'll say, "Oh, this guy's in trouble. How's he going to get out of it?" And we'll say, "Well, he's going to get out of it because he's the star, so they're not going to kill him off," you know.
Right.
So like, we were watching the show Hijack with Idris Elba in it, and he's like getting all these precarious positions, and we're saying, "Well, he's going to be fine because he's the star. They're not getting rid of him."
We're not worried.
But on the other hand, the Mayor of Kingston, they had the star, the guy from Friday Night Lights, and we say, "No, I like that guy. It's going to be good," and he gets killed in the first episode.
And I was like, wow.
So that's a new thing that they're throwing in there. But the thing is,
You know, the guy signed up for, he's like, "Listen, I'm only going to do one episode."
right. So now that's
Just to get it going.
it's become a cliche because it's happened so often. You're saying, "Wow."
So
this
now
is-
you really don't know.
yeah. But when it happens, you're not that shocked, you
Right.
know? So I think a lot of that is poor storytelling. You don't want to keep going to flashbacks because flashbacks are cheap.
Sometimes they work. We're watching Shrinking, right? That show Shrinking with
Yeah.
Jason. What's his
Jason
name?
Segel
Yeah.
and Harrison Ford.
Yeah, it's so funny. I mean, if I laugh out loud, actually laugh out loud, then it's good writing and it's funny.
Right.
And they do use flashbacks for the character of the wife.
Right.
And it does work. If it's done well, it works.
Right. And-
Other shows like Monarch did a lot of flashbacks, and it was confusing.
Yeah, Monarch is a monster show. It's a Godzilla show.
I love
Basically, it's
Godzilla
about
movies.
Godzilla. Lisa loves Godzilla.
Godzilla movies. I don't like vampires, but I love Godzilla movies.
Right. So they do sometimes jump right into a flashback, and if you're not paying attention,
We were watching the other night, and I'm like, wait a minute, is that a flashback? Is that now?
Right.
Wait a minute, you got to rewind, because I wasn't paying attention because I thought it was a flashback, and I was like, oh, it's a funeral. Meanwhile, it was a new funeral.
they'll put up a quick graphic like 2 years ago, and then go right into
If
it.
you blink and you miss that, or you look down away from the television for a second, and you missed that 2 weeks ago.
Right. And there's a theory that a lot of the shows that they're making, especially Netflix, they want to make stuff that you can watch, but also be looking at your phone, because they find that that's what the younger people do. They look on their phone while they're watching.
They're not
TV.
glued to the television.
Right. So they want to make it so that you are either forced to look at it, or it wouldn't matter if you're not looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just listening to it, you're not going to lose out on what's happening. And that's a storytelling that hurts a proper story. You know.
Well, look at Paradise. We've been watching Paradise. If anyone out there is watching it, great show. It's not lineal, and you
Right.
have to pay attention to what's going on.
Right. So it changes the point of view and everything like that. So when you're writing, when Lisa was writing, she had to determine, what point of view, who's talking. Oftentimes she would say, "Who's talking now?" I want to make sure that's clear.
Right. When we were editing and reading it out loud, I wanted to make sure that whoever was reading the book wouldn't have to go back and say, "Who's talking here?"
Right.
I want to make things clear.
Right. And that was one of the big points of contention between us, because she always wanted to make it clear, and I would say, "I don't care."
Yeah.
People either know it or they don't.
Yeah,
You
that
know?
was an argument that we
So-
used to have all the time.
Right. I mean, you should be able to read by the context who's talking. It shouldn't be Speranza said, and then Sean said,
Yeah, but I didn't do that. It was in conversation.
Right.
And some conversations got intense when there were 7 people having a conversation
yeah,
at one
no,
time.
yeah, that's reasonable, sure. But I mean, sometimes you don't have to do that. So all of that goes into the mix when you're making a story. And with Speranza is a specific voice, so it speaks with Lisa's voice a lot. And Sean. Now, then we delved into the 2 grandmas.
Yes. So we had to show the Italian side and the Irish side.
Now, we argue about that all the time. Not that we argue, but we notice the different effects of Irish and Italian. And I put a lot of my family dynamics. When we spoke, Lisa said that she wanted to use some of the dynamics because hers, I don't think, was as clearly delineated as mine. Or was, I guess. Your father's...
Yes, you had a brogue.
Right. Yes, that's true. So when she wrote it,
But I had to, we took parts of growing up of what we learned. I had an Irish grandmother that had a brogue. But I also made, now they're both witches. So she had to have more. And this is, I mean, I did name her Margaret.
yes, like your grandmother.
So she was, that was my grandmother's name. And but I got to play around with stuff, right? The way we describe her. If you read the cast of characters, and it has her description in there. But she I made her colder.
Right.
Now, of course, the Italian grandmother was warm and everything was about food, really good food,
Right.
and hugging and loving. And then the Irish side is a little colder.
Well, what happens is, as we all know, and I think you guys have observed in your own life, usually children are closer to their mother's family.
Yeah, that's just
normal. So, like, in other words, if she would have had an Irish mother who grew up in an Irish tradition, she would be totally different than she is because her mother was Italian and Nona was the main influence.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we grew up. I don't know how it is today. Who knows? Maybe TV is the main influence. But, Grand Theft Auto was my main influence because that's what I did every day.
But I did choose for the name for Nona. Her name is Justina, Christine, Chris.
Right.
And I chose my grandmother's name.
Right. So
it's a real name put on her.
You also did a lot of somewhat cliched parts, which is not cliche because cliches are there for a reason because they are true. So a lot of the attributes that we attributed to the 2 people, the 2 grandmothers, were typical of Irish. So we said the Italians were very operatic. They were very loud and boisterous. And the Irish were a little, quieter, although Irish people can be boisterous.
Music.
Right. They're more like an Irish pub. The Clancy brothers or the Chieftains are playing. And the other one is, opera screaming and knives flashing and all of that kind of stuff. And that's just a little bit of a cliche. It's good for people.
I think it works for people that are outside of New York, too.
Right. But it also gives people something familiar that they could hold on to. You don't want to make it so out of bounds that you would say, wow, that's unusual, So it's like, as an Italian person who doesn't like food, that's weird.
Right.
An Irish guy who doesn't drink at all, that doesn't work. I mean, you have to make it so it's recognizable, which you did very well. And you showed great, but the warmth is there on both sides. They both love their granddaughter, and
they both tutor her in the art of magic. But Speranza is very close to Nona.
Right, but they both try to subtly influence her.
But they both are against each other because they both want to be in charge of Speranza.
Right. When I was growing up in the 50s and 60s, it was a much more literal difference between Irish and Italian people. The Italians were one way and the Irish were that way. And they didn't mix as much. But then obviously there was intermarriage and all of that changed and people amalgamated it a little and they all ate at dinners together and stuff. So over time, your Irish grandmother would be sitting at a table with the Greek grandmother of another, tell that story.
Well, that was, I guess it was like Christmas. And because in the family, they were all the Italian sisters married a Greek man, an Irish man, Greek, Irish,
An Italian.
an Italian. So they were all sitting together, the grandmas, and they were having 3 different conversations
Right. Talking about 3 different things in different languages.
because they all couldn't hear.
Right.
And they were having 3 different conversations, and everyone was listening to it, and they were laughing and having a great time.
Right.
But they had no idea what the other person was saying.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately that's what we're missing today. That the influence of the grandmas is not there as the way it used to be, unfortunately.
And the different accents.
Right. And the grandparents usually came from the other side. They were imbibed with or imbued or whatever with the culture of Italian or Irish or Greek or Spanish or whatever.
Gathering around the table on Sundays.
Right. And that really came down to their kids and then to their grandkids. And unfortunately what often happens is the grandkid, that's why it's so good that the grandchildren get magic. That's really where we're going with that. Lisa was going with that. She was saying,
I really wanted family to be part of this. And you'll see it. Remember, this is a 7-book series.
right.
So this roller coaster ride just started.
Right. And one of the things that we just talked about the people, but then there's another whole aspect, and that's the fairies or the fae or the little people. Now, some of them aren't all that little, but,
Or they're little and then they're big.
and then they get big. So, we had to think about that. How did you decide to do fairies? How did you come up with the people that you used?
Well, the first thing was I had a dream, and I saw them in my dream, and I woke up and I described them to you, and I clearly saw what they look like, and they were not Disney fairies.
Right.
These were like little fae folk of the Never Never. I mean, I got to see them, and I think it was Una was the first one, and maybe the Monticello.
Right. Well, Una was the first one, but Mello.
Was the second one. He's a Monticello fairy. I think he might have been the first one that I saw in the first dream. And, the small roly-poly figure dressed in like a friar's robe. And he was like this little jolly little imp guy. And it was funny because when I was deciding to put his voice, that's where the influence of cartoons growing up came in. Minute Mouse. What is it? Courageous Cat and Minute Mouse?
Yes.
And the frog.
Right.
So I wanted him to have Frog's voice. And, how you doing?
So I said to her, "Oh, you mean Edward G. Robinson, who they based
Exactly.
that on?"
So we had this 30 gangsters movie vibe voice, which I thought was hilarious.
All right, everybody knows Edward G. Well, not everybody. Hopefully, some people know because we grew up on the $1 Million movies, so we used to watch old movies, so we knew exactly who that was. Basically, Edward G. Robinson is the guy in the movie The 10 Commandments who's wearing a toga, but he's got black socks on, and he goes, "What do you think of Moses now?" He had a real rat-a-tat talking, and he's like, the typical gangster that people used to make fun of. So you used to see Rich Little or whatever they would use him as one of the voices along with Jimmy Cagney and Jimmy Stewart. Everybody would imitate. So he's sort of like a cowardly lion type, right?
Yes, because he is afraid of his own shadow, but he likes to pretend he's a tough guy.
Right.
That's the part.
Well,
that
talk
you could
about
see.
how you
He's
did.
a little drunken sweetie.
Right.
And he used to teach Speranza when she was younger because he lived in the grandmother's house.
Right.
And there was something I was going to say about the place. So we brought the story in of the still in the backyard.
In the basement.
In the basement.
Right. Back in the day in Carroll Gardens, a lot of people, and then Lisa's family also that lived up in Our Lady of Peace Parish, there was a lot of home brewing of alcohol during Prohibition.
Yes.
And all the people had a wine press. Like in my grandmother's house, she had a wine press. She had, just like Lucy did, to step on the grapes.
But it was my great-grandmother's house.
Right.
And she had 7 girls. And one night, for some reason, her intuitiveness kicked in. She said, "Girls, I want you to sleep in my room and I'm going to sleep in your room." And they switched rooms. And that was the night that the still blew up. And the bedroom she collapsed through to the next floor.
Right. And that legacy of home brewing leads them to Monticello loving to stay in the cellar.
Because he has the backlog.
Right. There was some wine left over from back in the day, so he was enjoying it.
So because he's so tiny,
Right.
he'll go through it for years and has been.
And Nona used magic to keep it from turning to vinegar, obviously, as well. So, but tell how you decided to write the fairies. Where did they come from? Did you just make them up?
Well, first it was the dream where I got to see them. And then that's when I decided that I wanted the fairies to have like a gangster feel to them.
Right, but what research did you do to discover fairies?
Well, then we got the Encyclopedia of Fairies. I think there's like 4,000 fairies in that book. It is literally an encyclopedia of all different fairies.
Right, and what Lisa
There's
did...
no storyline in the book. It's an encyclopedia.
Yeah, so what it does is it lists a particular type of fairy and describes their attributes, like the Sylvani, their wind sprites, and they love children.
Something new. Fairies have been described and written about forever.
So what Lisa did was when we came up with a character like we did for the council, we would say, what kind of Russian folklore is there? Let's look up the Russians and what they talk about. And then let's look up the Norwegian people.
That's why this book took 3 years, because there was a lot of research. You can't just write about a whole nother world and not have research.
You could have told
where you want it to go.
Right. You could have also totally went the other way and been very Disneyfied and say, okay, the Irish, it's leprechauns, and just leave it at that, and not delve a little bit deeper.
They're not Disney fairies.
Right. You're going to delve a little deeper and be with the more obscure fairies.
It's a whole new world. That's why when I was saying, when I was reading that, especially during editing and writing, I like to read cozy mysteries at night, just something fun to read that I could just half pay attention to before I fall asleep.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Jim, why couldn't I have just written a cozy mystery? I have to create like when I started book 2, it was, I have to continue with this world and create more characters, because it's not just a character of a person that's real. It's in the Never Never. So there has to be like weird things that you have to come up with and really be creative and use your imagination. Right. And I try to think on it. What if they had this? But in that book, you can get a couple of attributes of what this person, this fairy would be like, but then you have to build a story around it. Right. And you have to shape it to make it work in your world, in the Brooklyn Witch world.
Right. And what you did was write a little backstory for each particular fairy and person.
It's not in the book.
No.
Because I have a Bible of characters that I keep. So you have a character in the back of the book. There is a cast of characters, but I have a Bible of characters, and each character I go more into their backstory and more things about them, so that if we ever have to create this character for film, I have more information about the character.
Right, and also you keep that for continuity purposes. So you want to say if the character acts one way in chapter 10. It can't act a totally different way in chapter 14.
No, because I also have a Bible of the outline of characters, of chapters that I know when there's magic, I know by each chapter what bullet points of what happened that's important that I could reference.
Right. So, for instance, what Lisa did was there was each character,
That's my Virgo moon. Yeah. I need to keep track of things because I'm like, did she do this at all? Did she say that? Didn't we do this before? When did she do that spell? Or I could go to this outline of chapters and be like, whoop, chapter 14, that's where it happened.
Right. So like a good example of that was the characters of the Red Cap. So tell us what a Red Cap is.
Well, they're like Murder Inc. for the queen, right? Queen Mob. Mm-hmm. It's her, they're hitmen for her.
Right.
And she sends them out to do her dirty work.
Yeah, and they're little fairies that wear a red cap, and they like...
And they use their... So what the reason why I have a red cap is they actually use that red cap to sop up the blood after they murdered someone, and that's how they clean up their own mess.
Right. But the example for that is now when you look at that character, you have to say, okay, so they're like
They're very mean.
They're vicious,
and ugly.
Right. They're ugly,
and smelly.
Right. Vicious, mean, ugly little beasts. Right. But then if you have them in now, if you're writing that story, do you say in chapter 36, is he going to be redeemed? Is he going to be a good guy? Is he going to save someone? No.
He's not going to change.
You have to make a choice. Well, you have to make a choice.
They're mean.
What can
They're
be
hitmen.
Yes, but what can be creative, like we say, when there's a twist? If that's the person's arc, you can also change it a little.
That would not be the character that I would switch
Right.
and change during an arc of a character.
Right, but that character is one way.
He's pretty lineal.
Right.
Lineal.
I don't know.
Either one? None of
Lynn
none of
Stallworth, the receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Doesn't matter. It's just that people are a certain way, but nobody's all of a piece. They contain multitudes. Things could change. So when you're writing,
you never know. By book 6, it could be something different.
Right.
Because I really don't have I have them sort of planned out, but not detailed.
Well, you said in the last podcast, one of the characters was a hero and then became more villainous.
Because that was organic.
Right.
And that is surprising. And some people, after reading book 1, that was their takeaway, that they really were upset about that. That made them feel really badly.
Right. Well, so that's
bad. I'm losing words here. I think we've been talking too long.
41 minutes so far. So here's the thing. When you write a book, as you've done so magnificently in this book, and then on your next book, you have a task, and the task is to tell a story, right? And as we said, there's so many cliches that you see it. And what Lisa does, which is annoying.
Why am I singing the Brady Bunch in the background?
I don't know.
Right now.
Because the next story goes to Hawaii, and there's the Brady Bunch characters show up.
Because here's the problem. I know we're discussing book 1, but I'm working on book 2.
Right.
So I'm in that world.
So here's a spoiler. They go to Hawaii in book 2.
Yes, they do.
And we had to research Hawaiian spirits.
That's a lot of research.
And unlike Irish and Italian spirits that we knew, and fae people and fairies that we knew about growing up, we have no concept of Hawaiian spirits.
Yeah, we have to do a lot of work.
It's the ghost of Don Ho is going to appear and make tiny bubbles come and cover someone in it so they can't move because they're covered in tiny bubbles.
I mean, I can't get the Brady Bunch out of my head because I remember watching that episode when they did bring like a little totem home.
Yes.
And then the spider was on Peter. I think it was Peter, right? The spider was crawling up his pajamas.
I didn't actually like the Brady Bunch, so I didn't watch it that much.
Anybody out there that watched it knows that.
I was watching The Untouchables while that was on, but whatever. So here's the point. The story that Lisa has written is...
We're definitely going to talk about more characters on other episodes.
Right. Well, this is just a brief outline, talking about how she came up with characters, how she writes about them, her process a little, and why it's...
Delving into the brain of Lisa is not... it's a little scary.
We need to leave some breadcrumbs so we can find a way out.
Yes.
Well, we're gonna keep going.
I'm scared, Norton.
We're gonna keep going because we want this to be an hour podcast. So we're not gonna just jump. We're gonna be Joe Rogan. We're gonna have a long form so people can listen and they can pause it and go about their business and then come back to it. So we could continue to talk just a little bit longer. So, okay, hold on. So we talked a little about character and plot, and how you weave the characters into the plot. And sometimes the characters become the plot.
Yes.
And their actions or their predilections sort of determine how the plot goes. So can you give me an example of one of the characters?
So one of the fairies, the Silvani. Let's talk about the Silvani. And her name is Salvatrice. And she's a Silvani fairy.
And those are Italian fairies, by the way. So that's an example.
Right, because she's a wind sprite from the woods of Sicily. And she's like 4 feet tall and usually not dressed nice. She's in like a frock kind of thing. But then she changes into all red. There's things like that. Anyway, what I wanted to really talk about instead of her description was
You don't
how-
want to mention that her toes are on the back of her foot?
Oh yeah, I should probably mention that. That's like a big thing. Like she has long gray hair.
Yeah,
she doesn't
she-
wear makeup.
We tried to go to 9 West to find shoes for her. It just didn't work.
Her toes are on the back of her
What's that
feet.
place you order from all the time? They're always getting boxes of shoes from?
We're not talking about my shoes.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Thank God.
changing the subject.
Okay. Just shoes, toes on the back of the feet.
Well,
Remember
she's
that.
a protector of children.
Yes.
Okay. I'm getting confused because what I did, exactly what we're talking about now, how the arc of this character is changing currently from book 1 to book 2.
Right.
Book 1, she was a little bit more mean, very sarcastic. Even though she was protector and she had some good qualities, it was really that she was mean and sarcastic.
And
So
nasty, yes.
if you remember when they were going to see, when Speranza went to go see the Queen, the Savani took her there and she had to follow her.
She was the guide.
She was her guide. And there's one little line. It's so funny because when my mother was reading the book, when she got to this line, she went, "Hey, that's what I said. You put me in your book." And I'm like, "Yes, of course I did." Because the Savani was mean. And she said,
Oh, how true. How true.
"You wore that all day." All of my family and friends know that my mother said that to me.
I'll tell the story of what happened.
So what happened was I was working in Manhattan and I wore this dress and I wore it and I must have seen about 15, 20,000 people or more on the train walking around the city, going to work and coming home. And when I came home, she said, "You wore that all day?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "You look horrible." So I'm like, that has to be in the book. That is such a Silvani line.
Yes.
And that is
A nasty,
one.
a nasty older Italian woman. Jeez, how'd you come up with that person?
She's not going to like this. She's very sweet as well. Her
Well-
arc. She has an arc.
Yeah, she has an arc. An arc de triomphe.
But so what happens is you get a glimpse of her in book 1.
Yes.
And you only see these parts, but she's very vital to book 2. And you'll see how she is protective. She has a role. And actually, I can't give any of it away. I would love to talk about how she is in book 2, but I can't. There's a lot more to the Silvani Salvatrice particular. And because I can't say certain things. But yes, she has toes in the back of her feet. And she's famous for the love of children. She loves her children. Because right now I'm stuck in book 2. I have to come back to book 1. I need help.
Right. So what happens is the books and the characters, the characters in the plot.
That's because you were reading your phone.
Right. Well, my phone.
Folks
Right.
at home.
Yes.
He was reading his
I
phone.
wasn't reading my phone. I suddenly started moving, and I said, "What the hell is going on here?" I took it
It was
over.
a voicemail.
Yes, it's a voicemail. So the plot is a service of the characters, and the characters are in the service of the plot. So we just
we should have started with this character because she's so vital in book 2. So much happens, so many chapters that she's involved in.
well, but the most important characters are obviously Silvana and her grandmothers, and that's the real.
But I just love the way this character changed.
Yeah, I mean, in the different fairies, all of them have personalities, all of them have qualities, and you have to bring each one out.
A little mean though.
Right. But one of the things that someone told us is they said, it's really hard for me to follow all the characters, and there's so many names, and it's tough. That's why you put the cast of characters in the back so
Yeah.
people can look at it.
I didn't want it in the front of the book because that's
Right.
annoying.
Yeah, I'm currently reading a book, and it's a little. This guy is a little tough too. He puts all these characters in, and they're not really clearly delineated. So what Lisa really tried to do is delineate and give them characteristics so you'd remember them.
And I put it in the back of the book as a bonus because if you look at the cast of characters section for the council, you did not get to meet their familiars in book 1.
And the familiar basically is a fairy who's intimately connected and with that particular witch or warlock. And
But you will meet them in book 2.
it's somewhat
So
different.
it was like a little
Yeah.
sneak peek.
It's somewhat different than what familiars are normally when stereotypically the witch has a familiar, it's a black cat. You know, that's
Right.
what everybody uses, right?
We didn't have that. There's
So,
no cats in
and it was interesting what Lisa did was, we talked about this a lot. She's saying, am I copying someone? Am I copying?
I don't, because I didn't want to do that.
Which you didn't. But what you do, it's a homage. It's in the vein of you're
Yes.
writing in a particular area, like Tolkien's books, which is the Bible, right? The Lord of the Rings. But there's a whole industry of people that wrote books about elves and dwarves and all of that and fantasy, and they write their own books, and some of them are really good.
But I don't think any of them have flock of seagull haircuts.
No. None of them do the moonwalk like Michael Jackson either. That's part of our book. But what you're doing is you're obviously not slavishly copying someone. You're using them as an inspiration and, you know, using that milieu, that world, and incorporating it into your vision, which is what the Brooklyn Witch is. So those characters, some of the characters we can't really go over all the dozens and dozens and dozens of characters, which is when we started this podcast we were talking about. We barely scratched the surface.
When I said flock of seagull haircuts, I meant the male gnomes. They all had flock of seagull haircuts when she goes to see
and that's an example of a joke or a reference that we didn't know if everybody would get. You know, if you grew up in the 80s, you know who the flock of seagulls haircut really is. There's a famous scene in Friends when they do a flashback. And Chandler comes home because he's Ross's roommate in college. He comes home and he walks in and he has a flock of seagulls haircut, and everybody cracks up because you immediately knew what that was. You know, now, unfortunately for me, when I watch stuff and there's a reference that's after 1989, I have no idea what they're doing. So I don't get it at all. But that's another thing. That's my problem. So
I think we touched on a few for this podcast if you were listening today with us. You have a little insight into
how you created the characters, what some thoughts about plotting, what you thought of how you thought about writing, and what we're trying to do with these podcasts is to bring the Brooklyn Witch to life, give you some ideas, some concept of where we're going and what it's about, and obviously promote the book so everybody go out and buy it. If you haven't bought it, I think you should have it in hardcover, paperback, and on your phone in case you need to read it on the subway and you have nothing to do. You could just jump right into the Brooklyn Witch.
But you can get it at thebrooklynwitch.com, and you can order an autographed copy.
Yes, with little surprises involved.
Yes, I always add little, fun things to your package. So
right. And also it's available, obviously, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, eBooks, Apple Books.
It's on Google. It's on it. I have it everywhere. There's links on the website. If you go to thebrooklynwitch.com, you'll find everything.
Actually, I just went in the men's room here at the Oceanside Library and wrote the first chapter on the wall.
So thank you for joining us.
And I want to say Lisa just made a horrified face, which she does about every 5 minutes as I'm talking.
Thank you for being here today.
She makes a horrified, oh my God, what are you talking about, Jim? So I hope you guys enjoyed it. We're going to try and do this as often as possible from the beautiful podcast headquarters in the Oceanside Library.
Yes.
We
have a shout out to the Oceanside Library.
Love everyone. Love Jade and Carlo and everyone here.
Everyone here, we love you.
And Eddie. Didn't want to forget Eddie.
Don't forget Eddie.
Crazy Eddie. So
just to wrap it up, we just wanted to let you know, thank you for listening. And today's podcast was from Stoops to Spells, meeting the cast of The Brooklyn Witch. And bye for now.
All right. Catch you next time, guys. Bye.